you very much, and thank you, Shell and the team, for inviting me. What a venue, first off. I don't know about you, but I was definitely downstairs on the Instagram, looking at all the Tom Dixon paraphernalia everywhere, but beautiful venue. And I did mistakenly have a Prosecco just before I came on stage. I feel like it's a bottomless bunch on a Sunday, and then I remembered it's midweek. But anyway, thank you very much for having me. Yes, up until last year, I had done 20 years at John Lewis, so I know I don't look old enough, but I started when I was at school, and kind of as .com grew, my career grew. So I ended up leading the majority of the customer teams at John Lewis, and then left last year and joined M&Co as their Chief Customer Officer. So I am here to talk to you about owning multiple touch points to deliver a flawless customer experience. But before we do that, and I'm not really going to go through the steps, because I think all of us in this room by now understand the power of omnichannel, understand it's important to find those customer touch points. You know, there is a plethora of data out there to tell us that. So I'm not going to stand up here and preach to you about that. But what I wanted to do is take a bit of a handbrake for a minute and just really focus on the strategy that we need to put in place to enable those flawless touch points. And that is the customer strategy. So there are a number of companies, brands, retailers still out there that don't have a strong, robust customer strategy. And I don't just mean a CRM strategy, I mean that end-to-end customer strategy. And as we get into the cost of living crisis at the moment, a lot of brands, a lot of retailers find themselves pushed into the trading strategy and trading day in, day out, week on, week out, and losing sight of that longer term customer strategy. But it is really key to continue to drive this in all of our organisations. And for me, it's underpinned with a really simple message, and you'll kind of see this theme throughout this presentation around being helpful. It's as simple as that. Being helpful to our customers, being helpful to our colleagues, being helpful in general to the environment. It all stems from that, and from that we will see the brand growth, we will see the customer growth, we will see the sales growth. And it really does play into that strong culture that customers want to see from brands from today. So I started off with 3 and then I made it to 8. So I'm going to talk to you guys today about my kind of 8 steps or 8 things to kind of watch out and build on when you're thinking about a customer strategy. So I do have, as is nature of these sort of events, some gifts to take you through. And don't worry, I'm not just going to talk to you with that slide up there. So the first one, qualitative is cool. So we have a plethora of data at our fingertips as brands, as retailers. But a lot of the time we pull that data on what we're currently surfacing customers. We're putting something in front of a customer or pulling the data as to whether they like it or not. There's an old school thing called qualitative, which means that we have to get off our backsides and go out and talk to our customers. And a lot of brands don't do that as much as they should. It's coming back to that real old school way of thinking. You know, going out and talking to the customers and saying to them, what do you want to see from this brand? What values do you want us to demonstrate? And what touch points and what mediums do you want us to help you to purchase the item or the service that you're looking for? And I use Schitt's Creek because I had to try and get Schitt's Creek in a presentation like this. But the reason I'm using Schitt's Creek, and hopefully the majority of you in this room, it's a bit like Friends. Like I'd love to know anyone that hasn't seen Schitt's Creek, and if you haven't, please leave. But no, all in honesty, it's a really good example of how different every single customer is. You couldn't get any more different from Johnny Rose to I don't know, I can't even remember half their names now, but I have watched it countless times. But what this really tells us is we have to go and speak to more and more customers. You know, you can't do a straw poll of one. You've got to go out and really devote time to this. So that could be through social listening. That could be through listening to phone calls. It could be going out into people's homes. And at John Lewis a couple of years ago, we went out and we invited ourselves, we just forced ourselves into people's homes. We invited ourselves, some of our customers' homes. We sat down, have a cup of coffee, and really got them to talk to us about what they wanted to see out of the brand and what touch points they wanted to see from us. The second one is don't alienate your core customer, protect them, inspire them. So there is a lot of noise out there around how do we get the younger customers. You know, you look at Soho House, and if you're under 27, you get 50% off. It's all very lovely. And then you realise when you go in there, a Whispering Angel or Lady A is about £40 a bottle, and you think, oh, can't quite afford it anymore. But the point of it is that they're trying to attract younger customers. But by doing that, you often alienate your core customers, and they may not be the cooler ones. They may not be the ones that you want, at this moment in time. But it's really important to engage with them and make them feel valued. And it is that loyalty piece, but it's much more than that. They're the bedrock. They're the ones that are bringing in the money, and then you're layering on the top, the less loyal customers, etc. So really focusing on that core customer base and making sure that you protect that. The next one is study the disruptors. So I'm sure all of us in this room go out and we study the competitors. If you're M&S, you'll be looking at Next, and you'll be looking at John Lewis, and you'll be looking at everyone else. But we're all doing the same things. That it's not revolutionising in that sector. We're all pretty much doing the same thing. So I always challenge my teams to think outside the box. Go and have a look at another sector. And these are some really great examples. Every single one of these. So Monzo, disrupting the financial sector. Deliveroo, disrupting the food service sector. Uber, disrupting transport sector. Netflix, disrupting at-home entertainment. The list goes on. Amazon for retail. But what all these guys do, really, if you take a step back, they've just gone, right, how can we be more helpful? How can we help customers get from point A to point B? Oh, that's Uber. Brilliant. We live our lives on our phone. Suddenly we can see that. Monzo is exactly the same. We can see what we're spending. We can send instant payments. Airbnb, easy. Just go on there. You find somewhere overnight to stay. And literally all they're really doing is being helpful. And they're taking a step back and they're disrupting the industries. So really go out there, and these sort of events are really great as well, because there is a plethora of different people representing different industries. Learn from that, talk to them. You never know when a spark of inspiration might come from a completely different sector. And then the journey mapping crusade. Be there when they need you and get out of their way when they don't. We spend so much time going, I want to be there for our customer, I want to be there at every touch point, in their face, oversaturation. Often they don't want you in their space. That's being helpful too. And it's really understanding at what point. It might be when you're surfacing an ad, when they're searching online. It might be, whatever the strategy is for your programmatic or display teams. It may be just as simple as, when do you surface that buying guide on that customer journey? But it's making sure that we're not saturating, but there's so much content out there at the moment. How can we make sure that whatever we are surfacing is helpful to them? Because as we're seeing this shift away from brand and product and more into the customer space, no longer are we going out there and saying, come shop with us. We're having to go out there into the customer space and present our values to them. We're having to convince them as to why they would even come and give their money to us, regardless of what product or service we have. And we're really starting to see that the Gen Zs are really pushing at these values. They're really wanting to know more around what customers stand for. So communicating that through the customer journey and doing what you say is absolutely, absolutely key. Otherwise, you'll have this moody cat, which some of you probably weren't even born when this was a massive meme. But anyway. The next one is content is key. So building a content-focused community. And we all know by now that, content's expensive to produce in-house, right? We have the photo studios, we can build the big sets, but it's expensive. But what we're seeing is this huge rise in customer-generated content or consumer-generated content. And that might be from influencers. M&S has just launched their virtual influencer. And at John Lewis, we launched a number of years ago now, #WeArePartners. And that's where we upskilled key partners across, we call them partners, employees, across our store estate. A lot of them, beauty advisors or fashion advisors. And we armed them with a Insta account, and we gave them the tools in which to then speak to their customers so that they can engage them at a different level. But more importantly, they could create loads and loads of content for us to then surface across all our channels. And this isn't just how quickly can we react to Kate Middleton wearing the latest jeans that we stock in Peter Jones, for example. It's how can we continue to be really fresh and really relevant. And #WeArePartners generated about 80% of our user-generated content at one stage. And so it really did become big business. But including your customers in this journey as well and in this content creation is key. Everyone loves to see their picture up there being used. Everyone loves to be involved in, curation. So Boohoo, for example, I don't know whether there's anyone from Boohoo, but they're quite well known for sometimes using their Insta channels and their social media channels to curate assortments or ask customers what they think of the dress. And then you start buying into the brand and feeling like that IKEA effect. So the IKEA effect is basically, for those of you that have bought a Malmo cabinet, you probably spent about 4 days of your life trying to get the bloody thing together. By the time you've done that, it doesn't matter how much you've spent on it, and it's relatively cheap. You've invested so much of your blood, sweat and tears, you love that product. And so that's what they call the IKEA effect. People like to be involved. But you're probably wondering why I've got Beats, Dr. Dre's film, up there. And I was at a talk in the States a couple of months ago, and this really inspiration guy, you can imagine in the States, very fancy. This guy comes up, very cool, had worked at Nike, had worked at Beats, knew Dr. Dre personally, and we were all going, oh, it's very impressive. And so he told us this incredible story. So he'd been CMO at Beats, when Beats sat back and went, right, how do we disrupt the marketing community? How do we make tech fashionable? Because at that stage, tech wasn't included in fashion. You didn't think of it as a fashion item, right? And they said, well, why don't we give our products to sports stars? Why don't we give the Beats headphones to Serena Williams when she walks out on stage at Wimbledon? Why don't we give them to Michael Phelps when he walks out at the Olympics? And suddenly, overnight, Beats became a fashion item. You started seeing it in Vogue. You started seeing it on, things to have for the weekend getaway. And so it really started to build up that momentum. But one day, Dr. Dre, this is his story, not mine, gives him a call and goes, mate, I've got a film that's coming out called Straight Outta Compton, and we need a really, really quick marketing campaign that will engage the masses, and you've only got $30,000. Oh, and by the way, we want you to work with Universal, which is unheard of for brands and, film houses to work together. So off he went, and he took the 3 youngest people in his team at the time in Beats and said to them, this is the brief. There is no brief. You've got $30,000. We need something that's going to go viral. So off they went. And for those of you that are old enough to remember, do you remember the CDs with the explicit lyrics box in it? Yeah, there's some nods at the back from the old people. It's very good. They went away, and a week later, he sat down and said, what have you got for me? And one of the guys, early 20s, walked up to a chalkboard and drew out the explicit lyrics box, which you see there. And he put Straight Outta Compton in it. And this guy went, okay, I can see what you're doing here, but not very exciting, is it? The guy from Career got up and walked across the room, rubbed out Compton and put Career. Then the guy from Brooklyn got up, walked across the room, wiped out Career and put Brooklyn. And from that, it generated a huge mass community of people generating their own content. Sports stars, brands, everyone was doing this. J-Lo from the block was doing Straight Out of Brooklyn. Even President Obama, when they were at that point trying to convince, I think it was the Senate or the US, around backing an Iran deal about uranium. And so they put straight out of uranium and posted that. And it suddenly became viral. And the point I'm trying to get across is think outside the box around what we can do with content. Because that content then touches every single touch point in that brand's portfolio, and customers really start to resonate with it. Next one is really, really quite obvious, the age of blended experience, human and digital sweet spot. So AI can't replace humans and humans can't replace AI, but each brand has to find that sweet spot. So Domino's in Australia, they were starting to get complaints about the quality of where the pepperoni was placed on pizzas. Customers were not happy. The people making the pizza just slapdash with the pepperoni. And so they bought in an AI function that helped the pizza makers make sure that they were distributing fairly the pepperoni. Had they gone all out and gone, right, okay, we're just gonna get a computer in and a robot to make all of our pizzas, that wouldn't have solved the problem, because one of the reasons people like it is because it's freshly made pizza and it's done by a human. But what they did was they found that sweet spot, that blend of where AI can help, but the human can still deliver. And so it's so important to take a step back, and every brand will be completely different in this. There are some brands where, as consumers, we are very happy to talk to a robot. There are others that literally people will go spare if they think that they're talking to a robot. John Lewis is a prime example. A core John Lewis customer, when they're missing their order of ready-made curtains, are not going to want to speak to an AI bot. Someone else, other brand, absolutely fine. So it really is finding that sweet spot. And then, RIP. I thought I'd leave her in. Oh, Angela Lansbury. Anyway, the next thing is don't get distracted. Sidestep shiny things and get the basics right. I know it's really boring, but we have to get the basics right. If we're going to adopt an amazing VR solution, well, let's make sure that we've got, the product rendering in 3D that will feed that VR solution. Don't get distracted by those shiny things. And one of the most important things I think as well is, and we hear it over and over again in the businesses that I work with, is attach whatever your strategy is to the wider business strategy. Again, I know it sounds really obvious, but if you want to get things over the line, make sure that they're attached to one of those business pillars, because you can bet your bottom dollar that the exec that's responsible for that business pillar will be delighted that you're making them look better by finding a solution for them to deliver against it. Then there's a culture piece. Having done so many years in John Lewis, as you can imagine, I'm very much around team and culture. But more and more coming out of kind of the wider marketing space and CX space, it's how do we build a team of master orchestrators? None of our teams now have the solution. We're so dependent on other teams, and it may be internal teams, it may be agencies, but how do we make sure that we upskill teams to be able to orchestrate across projects, orchestrate across campaigns? And by doing that, it will break down those silos, but we have to think more holistically. And then, does anyone know what HIPPO means? Shoot, go for it.
It's the highest paid person's opinion.
That's right. So HIPPO means highest paid person's opinion. So it's actually part of agile terminology. And it is the counterbalance to always being data-led. So what I mean by harmonise with the HIPPO is don't alienate the highest paid person, don't alienate the exec or the boss, bring them in. Because if you don't bring everyone in at the point in which you're going forward with your strategy, they will disrupt it along the way. But I thought I would share that one with you. It is widely known. It's not something that I've made up, but the highest paid person's opinion, it's quite a useful one. We used to band it around quite a lot at John Lewis if the highest paid person was giving an opinion. So it became a bit of a joke and a bit of a kind of a sense check. So it's a good one to bear in mind. And then that's finally it. It really genuinely is, how can we be helpful to every subset in society? How can we be helpful for all of our customers? And how can we be helpful to our teams? That's it. Thank you very much.